Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to give it 1 minute before we officially get started, just to let everyone join. Oh yeah, people were like knocking on the door. We got participants just rolling in. I should have had Ben like line up a whole comedy routine.
Pre-show.
Right?
That's a terrifying thought.
Now that I've thought of it, I'm definitely going to make you do it in a future webinar. Now that it's in my brain, it's definitely going to happen at some point. Okay. We have a lot to cover, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Autumn Sullivan. I'm the Marketing Director at Mobilization Funding, and today's webinar is about solving the construction labor challenge. I have amazing guests with me today. I'm going to let them introduce themselves and their organizations. Natasha, can we go ahead and start with you?
Absolutely. My name is Natasha Sherwood. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Electrical Contractors Association over here on the Florida West Coast chapter. We actually run from Tallahassee in the Panhandle down to Sarasota-ish area. And electrical contractors, merit-based shops that are constantly looking for labor at all times. So I'm interested to find out if Steve has a solution for me.
All right.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Steve Kona. I'm the president and CEO of Associated Builders and Contractors. We are one of the largest trade associations in the state of Florida, and we also run one of the largest apprenticeship training programs in the state as well. So it's great to be here, and I was hoping Natasha had all the answers, so that's why I was here today.
Well, that's three people without the answers, but I'm Benjamin Holmgren. I'm with BuildWit. And we have two companies. We have one which is a construction marketing. So we work with heavy civil contractors, dirt companies, earthwork companies, drilling, mining, and we help people tell their stories. We help these companies tell their stories. We help them find great people. We help them with all of their marketing, typical marketing services, and ultimately it comes down to telling stories. Our second business that I'm kind of heading up now is a new project that we just launched called BuildWit Leaders. I might talk a little bit about it later, but BuildWit Leaders is really training and development for employees, for teams, for leaders. And it's really about growing leadership in construction. And so I'm sure today I'll share a little more about kind of our philosophy behind that and why we started that, because it really has a lot to do with solving the challenges in construction and the labor shortage. So looking forward to this.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time today. Let's go ahead and get started. I do want to make a quick note. If you have a question for the panel, please drop it in the Q&A section or in the chat. I will be checking that in between questions. And if we don't get to your question during the webinar, fear not, I will get back with our guests and we'll create a YouTube video specifically answering your question, and then we'll load it up on Mobilization Funding's YouTube channel. So I promise we'll try to answer everyone's questions. So this webinar actually started when I was researching a blog topic on construction labor, and I read a CNN article that said the construction industry is losing workers faster than it can attract new ones. And I'm going to open this question up to Steve first. Steve, what are some of the factors that are causing this great resignation in the construction industry?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a resignation. I think it's retirements. I think there are a lot of folks who are aging out of our workforce, and unfortunately for our industry, we haven't done a good enough job to actually replace those folks that are coming in. So I think a lot of things had to do with it. I mean, obviously we had a few recessions that hurt our industry. And we just didn't get the skilled labor backlog as far as getting our folks trained up. Now it is kind of a crisis for us, and we are looking at all avenues to ensure that we are training the next generation of skilled workers.
Okay. Did anyone want to jump in on that, or do we want to keep moving?
I would echo the same thing as electricians are retiring, and it's mostly retiring faster than we can keep up with it. It also, I think, and Steve and I live in the same area, and it's kind of seen the same college for everyone and a big push for college,
Mhm.
which and my daughter's at college. It's a great option, but it was for many years that there was that gap in skilled labor being shown the attention that it should be, and the fact that I don't think it's an alternative to, I think it's an equal option to college, and that hasn't been what's been pushed. And so now not only are you overcoming the stigmas with guidance counselors, but teachers and parents, and there's a whole new learning cycle that we have to go through. And so we're seeing that gap between the generation that's retiring and this generation that I think we are starting to reach, but it leaves a big gap in the middle. And so I think coming together with these apprentice programs like ABC and IEC offers is helping to close that. But I think that's probably one of the most difficult ones, is because everyone has been told that college is the first option. And if you can't do college, then we might have these other things for you. And I'm a former K through 12 principal, so I push college, I'm for it, but it's not for everyone, and not just because it's the best option. So I think that's probably what's driving a lot of our gap.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that narrative precisely in just a little bit. Let's talk about recruiting and retaining millennials. Ben, you had the amazing opportunity to speak with Jocko Willink on your podcast about millennials in construction specifically. Do you want to talk a little bit about that conversation and what is it? What will detract millennials and what will attract millennials to the construction industry?
Yeah, so there's two quick qualifiers before I start. One, my boss, Aaron, he's kind of this celebrity, Aaron Witt. And so I work for him. He was the one that talked with Jocko. I've met Jocko. He's a great guy. And I saw all of their conversation, but it wasn't me. So I just want to clarify that. The second is there is the millennials conversation. But what's funny is, like, as more time goes on, it's less and less about millennials, because we're seeing millennials, like, that's my generation.
Right.
Millennials are all of a sudden in charge. And now we have like Gen Z and these other youngsters that are coming up. And I know I look like I'm 16 years old, but those kids need to know, and so it's not just millennials, it's the next generation as well. So I'll tell you what we're seeing and the conversation with Jocko. This is going to be maybe the most inflammatory thing I'll say all day, but I really, really don't believe that it's so much a labor shortage as it is a shortage of leaders who know how to lead the next generation. And that maybe makes a cute soundbite, but ultimately that's what the world has changed. And it seems to me that, from traveling around, seeing these job sites, talking with people who either are struggling with this or companies who have solved this at their level, it's leadership. Everything's a leadership issue. And my generation, the younger generation, kids coming out of high school, are less interested in how business was run 40 years ago. Kids my age want to have a mission to get behind. They want to have a vision. They want to understand their career path. They want to be led and trained and developed. And as Natasha was talking about the college thing, is like, that's been the, we'll talk more about that. That's been the big push, but it doesn't mean that if I come into the industry or the trades, that I don't want to be developed, that I don't want to learn, that I don't want to have education. Absolutely, I do. And my generation does. And so that's one of the big things that we took away from our conversation with Jocko. And it just backed up everything we've been seeing for a couple of years now, traveling around. The companies who have solved this on the individual level, they understand that it's not about millennials. And the longer that we blame millennials, the longer we blame Gen Z, the worse this is going to get. Right. Taking ownership of solving this for your company is the elixir. That's the solution. It's not millennials.
It's not millennials and avocado toast. That's my favorite. If you like,
Right.
like why
Love
are you
avocado
about
toast, too.
avocado toast? Well, and I love that you said that because another data point that I was reading during my research was that work culture was actually a major factor in a lot of skilled trade veterans, people who have been in the industry for a long time. It was the reason that they decided to leave. It's either the reason they decide to leave their current place of employment for another, or it's why they leave the industry entirely. So while we often frame the idea of work culture as a new thing that young people are pushing for, it really seems like everybody wants to talk about work culture in construction. And so my question is open to the panel, whoever wants to go first. How are you seeing the industry respond to this new call for an awareness of your workplace culture? Don't all jump up at once.
I don't mind at all. I definitely see, and so we have we have a vast diverse group of contractors, from small to large. And you can tell that no matter the age of the employee. And so we work with our apprentices who are just coming in, just starting in the electrical industry, still into long-term employees as we're looking for the manpower, trying to find labor. And they are all looking for a culture that, and it's not the perks that when we always hear associated with millennial, but it is the benefits, and it's not always a financial benefit. I will see people take a job at maybe even a few dollars, even a dollar less an hour type job, but for a good culture, for a good company that has benefits, and not just like a health insurance benefit, but a family atmosphere, a group that works together, flexible time. They are interested in that. I just helped a 4th-year apprentice with graduate who had opportunity to go anywhere. He took a job at a company that paid, I think, $2 less an hour because it was a good fit. And then we're also seeing, and I'm sure we're seeing people move in from all over the country, moving into Florida. So they're coming in droves. I mean, I think like 900 a day to the state, but many of them are looking for that culture, that they have a feeling of being welcomed, of being included, of having an opportunity to grow and learn, whether they're an 18-year-old or they're we just had an apprentice graduate who's 60 years old, who wants that opportunity to develop. And I think that goes into that culture, is that they're appreciated, and that and maybe that's something we did learn from that millennial or zennial age group or whatever, that there's that level of appreciation that is sometimes more important than the dollar bottom line. And I think that's sometimes the difference you see between them. But the culture definitely changes where I see them stay, because I see them move. They'll leave here and they go there, and you kind of track where they go, and I can almost pinpoint clearly where they will end up.
We had a question from the audience, which I think is an interesting one, and it was about the correctional industry. So looking at correctional institutions and working with them as viable solutions for talent pipeline. Do any of you have any experience working with, and I know there are some groups, I know there's one out in Seattle, but do any of you have any experience working with groups that specifically work with correctional institutions to train for construction?
I can jump in here for a second. Yeah, I think, our pipeline is, we're looking for all sorts of avenues to fill the pipeline. And one of those avenues obviously is folks coming out of corrections and coming back into the industry. What we are seeing is that we are getting asked by state leaders, state politicians, to actually, work with them to actually help develop skills while folks are still incarcerated, so we can build some skills when they're in prison or in jail, and work to, whenever they get out, help get them back plugged in to society. Because I think everyone realizes that if you can give folks opportunities and jobs when they get out of being incarcerated, I think the chances of them are going back are very slim. So we need to make sure that we are doing that investing. And I think our industry, and Natasha can tell you, is very open to partnering with state lawmakers, state correctional facilities to help us engage those folks and get them into the workforce.
we just started a pre-apprenticeship program with the DOJ out of Tallahassee. So I know it sounds weird, but it falls into our area. So it's out of Tallahassee Community College, and the idea is that they will learn portion of it while they're in, and then they'll be able to move into a higher level. So whether they test into our second year or our third, our program's a 4-year program. And so the idea is to start that program. It's just in development, and it's using our curriculum wise, but the idea is to provide those workers on both ends. So it's a win-win. It's providing somewhere for them, a means that they have the knowledge, something to do while incarcerated, so they have a reason to continue to move towards release. And then from there, they have a skill when they get out, a highly employable skill. And then for our contractors who've invested in that, in the idea of this program, they have skilled labor coming to them. I would hope it would expand. It is something we've just started in, but I see it as obviously a great place, not only for our contractors, but for our state.
Thank you. So we talked about Gen Z. So let's talk about shop class, since we talked about Gen Z and the younger kids, because Gen Z is all the way from 1995 to 2012, right? So some of them are very little, while some of them are already in college. So shop class was almost completely extinct. It's slowly coming back now, but there's still a big trade education gap, particularly in high school, but also in middle school. It used to exist and now is almost completely gone. So Natasha, can you talk a little bit about the role of apprenticeships and mentorships and how they help fill that gap and how companies can get involved?
Right, definitely. There's a couple of different ways that we work, and I'm going to flip it over to Steve at the end because he does a lot, just not with ABC, but in his own personal life. But so there's different ones. We work with specific schools that have programs already. And it's not so much the shop class. What I would love to see is that move so that it is available at all the high schools. So it's not just you're going to one school just for that. So most of the schools that we're working with are pre-apprentice type programs, where again, they're kind of taking the first year of our program over 4 years. And by the time they graduate from high school, they're able to come into a second year of our program. There are some programs with iBuild out of Orlando, or ACE program, which we are looking to actually copy and look at it, which is providing that mentoring, what you're talking about. So it's sending workers from our contractors in to partner with those schools that are right now more considered technical schools, and their speakers or their job shadowing when they're allowed off the campus, when we get out of COVID, they can go on field trips and so forth. But that is, and what we're seeing is those contractors that are more involved in the mentoring are having a much better hiring because they already know, the students know those names and the companies and so forth. But I think beyond that, I think it is a figuring out from a community based, and iBuild is one of the ones we're working with in Orlando and Tampa areas, trying to bring the contractor, the school together to better the community. But there still are some of those bridges that they're not burned or anything, just like you said, they've been left alone for years, and they haven't, they're a little wobbly on the bridge. And I think there's that aspect, but the one we are not talking about is really trying to bring that into every high school, so that every kid gets that exposure to it. Because if I don't make that decision in middle school, like you talked about, so if I didn't make a decision to go to Tampa Bay Tech or to whatever technical school, I probably don't have the chance to change my mind by the time I'm in 9th or 10th grade. Like I can't change schools, especially in our districts. It's not super easy to change high school. And then where are you in the program? So it really does transfer down into that middle school. And we've been working with Junior Achievement they did a huge program here out of Pinellas, a virtual career fair. We used to do real live one, but trying to hit the middle schoolers. So the idea was middle schoolers doing some hands-on and just seeing the opportunities. And it was everything from, cosmetology to electricians to building constructions to graphics and so forth. And I think that's where we have to look at is introducing it in middle schools and of making it more available through more high schools, which is where Steve was doing a great job in my area with and trying to really expand it through Hillsborough.
Well, I will say the greatest benefit to our industry would be a solid pipeline out of high school into the trades. That is what we are focused on as an association and as an industry. We have to do a better job of attracting students right out of high school into into our industry. I mean, that has to be the main focus. And how that works, obviously, we have to do a better job from a state perspective, from a educational perspective, in making sure that our students are aware of all of the opportunities that are available to them after high school. Not just a particular welding program at a high school or an electrical program at a high school. It has to be a statewide effort to in our educational system to promote opportunities in all occupations that don't necessarily require a 4-year degree. And I think that is what we need to see, what needs to happen, because that's our greatest pipeline. Right now in our apprenticeship training program, the average age of our apprentice is 26, 27 years old. That has to be, we have to get that lower. We have to get that to be 22, 21 years old, because we're getting these folks coming into our program as, it's an afterthought to them, right? They didn't go to college. They don't want to work fast food. They don't want to work in these, hourly jobs. They want to build skills and careers. They shouldn't have to wait till 26. We should start promoting that in middle schools and throughout their, K through 12 career.
Or they went to college and it wasn't for them. And now they have a lot of debt and they need a real job.
Yeah, let's not talk about student loan debt. I'll cry.
I agree with what Steve said wholeheartedly. And I would chime in on this from our perspective. So admittedly, we're a marketing firm, so take it with a grain of salt. But yet again, like I bring us back to Gen Z, millennials, like where are the eyeballs? I think that we need to do a better job at telling the story of the trades, of working in excavation, in utilities, and electrical and plumbing, and understand where the eyeballs are. It's one thing to put on a trade show or a jobs fair, which I admire that. I applaud that. I think that's awesome for local, all of this kind of stuff. That's good. That's a great solution. But what about Instagram? What about TikTok? Yeah, I know everybody's rolling their eyes, whatever, but you wanted me on the panel. This is what I'll say.
This is why I wanted you on the panel, Ben.
There's whatever 100 something eyeballs watching this clip right now. And one thing that they could start doing today, if you're not doing, is using social media to start telling the story of your business, of what you're up to, show people what it's actually like to work in your industry. Talk about it. Like that's what we see works time and time again. It's not that you have to try to make it look cool. The trades is already cool. Like it's amazing. Like get in here and get into an apprenticeship program, or get into work with a journeyman for a while, get some years under your belt. Come join us. That's what we need to be telling people.
Yeah, and the comments rolling in really back that up. People are talking about, do you know how many kids leave the foster care without a career path? Why aren't we tapping into them? What about people who leave the military with, having only served 2 or 3 years? They're still young. They have they already have a good skills background. They obviously have the dedication. So why aren't we reaching out to them? And what you're talking about, Ben, really makes me think about how the military does a great job of recruiting kids with ROTC officers and billboard campaigns and all of that. So really wrapping construction into a cool message that people that young people can identify with, to make it a more just really to illuminate that it is a viable option. It's not a substitution. It's not lesser than college. It's just a different path, and telling that whole story of not just it's cool and it's fun, but also you can feed your family, you can travel around the country. Like there's a lot of opportunity here, depending on where you want to go with it.
That's exactly right. And to polish off the point, we need to the narrative. There is the college thing. But the narrative of it's not just cool, it's not just fun, but this is absolutely critical. Like we can do with fewer underwater basket weaving degree majors. We need people to put in pipelines. How are you going to turn on your electricity? How are you going to turn on your shower in the morning? Where's your sewage going to go? This stuff needs to happen. And this is critical infrastructure. And so that's like, there's more fulfillment in it than people give it credit for. It's critical. needs to happen.
And to Steve's point, and to what you just said, it's more than just, it is more than just construction. We need to give options that we just need all of those skilled trades options that don't require a 4-year degree. And you can still get one if you want. And we'll talk about the options for continuing education. And maybe that's where we talk about that is right now. You can still get a college degree and work in construction, but you can be making a good paycheck in the meantime. So Natasha, Steve, whoever wants to take this, let's talk about the role of offering continuing education as an incentive to retain workers.
Well, I think there's two things you talked on. One is continuing education. For our industry, there are required CEUs as well. So there's that part where they have to continue learning, but then there is the optional part. So similar to like what Benjamin was talking about, leadership. So where do those next superintendents come? Where do those next foremen come? And where do you identify them? So Steve and I both also have apprentice programs. So our apprentice programs, we actually were on a call last week with one of our community college partners. So our kids are not only in an apprentice program where they're on the job training, they're actually at a community college where they're earning college credits that they're not paying for, that they are, and they're being paid. So there's that option. But then in addition, one of the things I'm working with the Florida Apprentices Association is articulation agreements. And that's something as a state that we can do as well, is if we provide those articulation agreements that are across the board for the state college system, then it becomes ongoing learning. So not only is what they're learning to become an apprentice, giving them college credit, they're then connected with that state college and able to maybe take business classes. So maybe they do want to become, they want to own their own, become a contractor on their own. They want to become estimators. They want to move up, and those options are available through our partners. But then as well, we're able to do as an association, and I know Steve does similar trainings that make our contractors better, whether it is technical knowledge, business knowledge, or just contributing community knowledge. And I think that does keep them engaged. And it goes back to like Ben was talking about in the culture, is it's an engaged employee is someone who stays with you, right? So if they like where they're working, you do business with people you like. It's not, so if you have them continuing to become engaged and investing in them, that's another part of that culture. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we do everything from fire alarm, burglar alarm, and OSHA and journeyman prep, and similar to what, I'm sure and Steve's doing down there, but the leadership training. And that really is identified, again, getting those kids when they're 18 to 24 rather than 24 to 26. They get in that pipeline, they're running jobs by the time they're 26.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback, I think, what we're seeing is in this day and age, in this economy, you have to invest in educating your workforce. There are no unemployed electricians and plumbers sitting on the sidelines. They're already employed. So if you're going to build your pipeline, you have to build your pipeline by investing in people who might not necessarily have the skills that you need at that time. But if you're going to create your own pipeline, investing in your employees, training them, putting them in apprenticeship programs, and you know what, and actually maintaining it through their life cycle as an employee. I can tell you right now, one of the things that we're doing is, training superintendents on how to lead apprentices, right? We talked about, Ben, you brought up a good point earlier, like this is how, you lead to engage, the younger folks coming into the workforce. So, we're as an association, we're offering as many courses as we possibly can to focus on how employers upskill their employees, and that's going to be a continuing effort, and we're going to see more and more of that as we grow as an industry.
Absolutely. This will sound like a completely shameless plug, but just to back up what both of you just said, I mentioned build with leaders during my intro. That's exactly what we're doing for the heavy civil dirt industry. Like, how our vision is, we're going to create this training platform. It's live. You can go look it up. You can sign up today. But we create this training platform that teaches, yes, the skills. We want to be able to take someone from total newbie out of high school, teach him how to be a great grade checker, a great laborer, and then teach that guy or gal how to be a great operator, and then how to be a great foreman, to a great superintendent, to a great project manager, an estimator, and eventually a business leader. Like, And we can teach all that. Those are tangible skills. And I think the important thing that to note is that we need to give youngsters a path. Like, we need to show people a path, and that they're making progress toward a goal that they value. So many people, the narrative is that construction is this dead end job. And if you bump into somebody 2 years later and they're like, yeah, I'm still working in construction, it's like a bad thing. It's like, no, that's not a bad thing. I'm on track. Yeah, I'm almost through my apprenticeship program, or I just became a foreman. Now I'm learning how to lead my crews, how to deal with superintendents. So that's what we built Build What Leaders about and for, and that's the philosophy, is like, give people a path, develop your people, invest in people. As Steve said, that's exactly what we're seeing, and that's a huge part of the solution.
That's awesome. We have a question from an audience member. Christina asked, what are we doing to address workforce development in disadvantaged and underserved populations? And it dovetails very nicely with one of my questions, which was about diversity as part of the labor challenge. The last research I did had 6% of the workforce, of the construction workforce, was African-American, and 10% of the workforce was made up by women. So obviously, a lack of diversity is part of the problem. So Steve, let's start with you. What strategies would you recommend for a construction company to address their diversity challenge as part of their talent and pipeline challenge?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you're absolutely correct. But I will tell you, from a construction standpoint and from our apprenticeship program standpoint, we run a very diverse program. I would say, we're probably hovering around, 35% Hispanic, 18% African American. Where we do struggle, and it's something that we have to be better at, is getting women attracted to coming into our industry. Now, that has changed quite a bit when you talk about from a general contractor's perspective, from project managers to assistant project managers. You're seeing a huge influx of females coming in to those positions. We need to be better from a trade perspective, training, giving females the options to come in and be electricians. I think right now in our program, we're training about 350 apprentices, and I would say 12 to 15 of them are female, which is great. Awesome. I'd like it to be more, but I'm encouraged by what we're seeing. And to get to the question on low income, disadvantaged folks, this is the greatest career path for any individual. The quickest way to become a owner, a CEO, is, in my opinion, through the construction industry. Once you learn a trade and then figure out a way to monetize it, you can quickly become, from a apprentice to a CEO in a very short period of time. We've seen folks that we've brought into our programs from disadvantaged communities. We have an example of a Black female apprentice who started 2 years ago. Now she's in our program right out of high school. She bought herself a new car. She's doing very well, providing for her family. So I tell people all the time, this industry doesn't really see color, it sees skills. And when, if you have those skills can take you pretty much anywhere in our industry.
And I would ditto our numbers. I just pulled them up to make sure. So we have about 403 across the state. We only have 8 women. It's super sad. And an organization run by a woman here. And I still struggle. Diversity wise, we do better. So we're pretty similar in numbers. We're probably about 25% African American, 25% Hispanic, and then 50% white and other, and so forth. That area seems to work. But I think part of that, the diversity is just getting there, is, again, back up to your very first question, that gap. So we're talking a long time ago when electricians were first being, and then we didn't educate them. So now we're catching up, and diversity we do have, I think, a good handle on, but some of that's reaching out. So like, we work with the migrant workers, and we're heavily involved out with the migrant workers around the area. AMI, which is a group works with kids who have maybe gotten in a little trouble and so forth, and then some just disadvantaged groups. You mentioned foster children. That's a super big heart of mine, and we have looked at how do you reach out into those groups as well. And we do have some work with Eckerd in those. But by far, the population is to get to it. I mean, believe me, I drove my daughter all the way up to college 2 weeks ago, being like, you could be an electrician if you went into my apprentice program. Like, you'd own it in 4 years. Like, I wouldn't pay a dime for this college to drive you to. And I got 90 employers for you, and you could pick which one, and they will hire you. As I get resumes in, yeah, if I get a minority woman, like, it is a bidding warfare on my, you give me the resume first. No, give me the resume first. But we do have a lack of availability to connect with them. And I don't know exactly what it is. Steve and I were, like I said, we were working with a community college the other day. How do you reach that population? And part of it is a stigma, is again, breaking down those stereotypes that what is involved in it. I think, there's positives coming out of COVID, and we got to find some, right? There's got to be something, is that we've identified what essential workers are. None of my guys stopped working. Most of them are working overtime from March 13th, 2020.
Mhm.
They haven't stopped yet. So there's that aspect, but also for us to learn how to reach out. And some of it comes to the military. Someone was asking about the military reach out, and some of it is women coming out of the military, and where do we direct our resources? And I think it may be one of those things where we have to start working more to all the skilled labor together, kind of working
Mhm.
as where and how do we reach out? And then working with our educational partners. Let's use some of the funding they get from the state to go target those people who will best build our tomorrows, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, there was a great comment in the chat that said, it's not that the space is disadvantaged, but that it lacks opportunity reach outs. And I think that really speaks to, like, each individual organization, each of you are doing great work reaching out to these different populations, these different groups. But it's really hard to get, to your point, where are we going to put our resources? And it to me, it speaks to a need of a strategic cooperation among many different organizations or many different skilled trades to address this issue. But it's very, it's to me, it's a positive to see how much work is being done in that area. And then, someone else was talking about, Natasha, real quick, we had a question in the chat.
AMI.
What does
AMI
stand
say?
for?
I saw it. I'm actually looking up the actual what it means. It's AMI Kids in Tampa, and so it's a group that it's across the whole state. So I'm looking up real quick what it actually stands for, because I should probably know that, but I just always call them AMI. It started out as really working with Marine Institute, so it takes students who may have had problems in schools or problems at home, and it took them in and they taught them. They did high school and really probably what you would call apprenticeship, but worked on Marine. And that's what it was Marine Institutes. But now it has gone out. They have pre-apprenticeship, construction, pre-apprenticeship trainings and so forth for these students. So instead of going to either a juvenile detention or to some other diversion, this is a process they can use. And I'm looking it up right now. It's amikids.org, but let me find out what it actually means. But it works across the state, and they have chapters across the state. It may be like FFA, where they've gone away from Future Farmers of America, and now they're just FFA. That doesn't stand for anything.
FFA, yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you if I find it. AMI Kids. It's all about AMI Kids. But that's what it is. And it's amikids.org. So if anybody is interested in how that does work out. I don't get any kickbacks or anything. They're just a great group.
I love it. We have a bunch of questions in the Q&A. I have one last question for the panel, which is about that narrative, the narrative that construction is a last resort, the narrative that construction is a dead-end job. We know that is a systemic problem in the industry. We also know that we can't change the whole industry because we're only 4 people. And so my question for you guys is, what can an individual company do to start changing that narrative? What is what would you recommend a business owner turn around and start doing today to help change that narrative?
I can start. Look, I come from a family of carpenters, right? My grandfather owned a general contracting business. He built a huge amount of homes in the Tampa Bay area. And when I would work for my grandfather's company in the summer, my grandfather would tell me, he's like, you need to go to college so you don't have to work like this. So it's self-inflicted, right? So as we my grandfather had an 8th grade education, but he also learned to be a carpenter, learned a skill. And he ended up having beach houses and a really nice house and really nice cars. And I can remember saying, well, why don't I want to do this? Mm-hmm. So I think as an industry, we need to, the folks who work in this industry, we need to be the biggest promoters of that. We need to talk to parents. Look, there are parents of electricians that still want their kids to go to college. And when they say they want to be an electrician, the parents are like, well, but, so we have to change the culture. We have to change the narrative because, this country was built because people learned skills and built it. No one can say this country was built because people went to college. And I know that sounds bad, but this country was built because people learned skills and created things and built things. And I think that's what we need to continue to push. And, and as a parent, I want my kids to learn skills that can self-sustain them, whether it's college or whether it's learning a trade. So as parents, as an industry, we need to be better avenues for pushing, the narrative that this is a viable option.
I think part of it is also showing while we're doing that narrative, and we're making sure that we are kind of living that narrative, but we're also, whether it's the videos, it's the TikToks, it's the espousing the virtues of it, the fact that you can go home, your workday will start early, but you can be home with your kids. You can buy, you're getting your home because you're earning instead of collecting debt. And it's, there is that aspect of reaching to the kids, the TikToks to the kids, but there's also that part of getting into the guidance counselors in the high schools or the middle schools and creating that such, one of the things we're looking at is when we do field trips for the guidance counselors. Come see what it takes to run come see an electrical contractor, or day an electrical contractor. Come see how many aspects, come meet my vice president of XYZ company that has a nice boat and a nice car and a nice house and no college degree. Right. And I think that part of it is and it's discussions like this. It's discussions that we have as a community. It's workings with our chambers and working with our legislators, working with our councilmen, our representatives. And we're lucky with the Pathways to Career, and we have a governor who is gung-ho about funding apprenticeships and that kind of workforce investment. And I think it's championing that and it's talking about it. And it's not saying just. That's my worst thing when I hear no, you didn't just do anything. And I don't like that if I'm just a stay-at-home mom or I'm just an electrician or I'm just an apprentice. It is changing that narrative on that part that this is, and let's be honest, financially can be awesome. I mean, let's speak their language. You can buy a car, you don't have debt, you can buy a nice house, you make good money and you have good hours. And there's also lots of overtime if you want it, and you can go be an instructor, you can be a lifelong learner, and I think those aspects are the part. I didn't do a good job with my first kid. I got 3 more. Maybe one of them I'll get to be an electrician, and that would be awesome. But I think that's what it is, and like I said, I was a K-12 principal and knew nothing about these opportunities, and I'm like, wow. And I worked with all low economic kids, the 34,000 for a family of 4, and didn't know this opportunity existed. And I want to hit my forehead. Like, gosh, I didn't tell it to these kids. So it's how to, it's changing that narrative and talking about it.
Both of you, very well said. I'll echo some of what you said, but I want to make a point because for, 5, 6, 7 years, owners and leadership in construction have been saying, it's so hard to find good help. You ask them what their biggest problem is, like, we just can't find good help. We have all this work, we can't find good help. Don't people get tired of talking about how they can't find good help? Like, don't you just get exhausted saying the same thing for 5 years, 7 years, 10 years? We know you can't find good help. Do something. And this is kind of an ironic thing because we're on this conversation about solving the challenges of labor shortage for the industry. I'm not interested in solving the industry's labor shortage challenge, but if there's one person on here who can take something from this and it lights a spark and they can solve it for them, that was a win. You're not going to solve the problem for the industry. Mike Rowe isn't going to fly, bless his heart. He's not going to fly to your house and help you solve your the industry's labor problems, but you can solve it. You can do something for you. And we work with dozens of partners. Heck, BuildWit ourselves, we have 40 people. We don't have a hiring problem. We don't have a retention problem because we tell stories. We see it with our partners all the time. These contractors who are having people move to new cities to come and work for them. Mm-hmm. We have dozens of case studies like that, where someone was like, I didn't even realize that existed. Cool, but I saw you on Instagram 100 times, and now I'm gonna move to Tennessee and work for you as a scraper operator, because that's a bargain. No, by the way, dirty little secret is he makes 80 or 100 or $120,000 a year doing so. And so I'll echo what Steve said. Well said, my friend. We need to be like, if you're in this and you're struggling with this, but you're not talking about it, you're not being the biggest promoter of it, you're part of the problem. You need to be telling the story. That's it. And telling a story can look like Instagram and TikTok, but it can also look like reaching out to your schools and starting these programs and apprenticeships. But it's on you. That's the point. You're not going to solve it for the industry. Don't worry about that. Solve it for you.
Yeah, and that, we talk a lot at Mobilization Funding about being a purpose-driven business and putting a purpose behind what you do every day. And I really think that is key when it comes to the talent challenge as well. If you are, if you are a woman-owned business in construction and you are passionate about spreading that message of opportunity, then you need to be reaching out to those organizations to see how you can help put your efforts toward that success. Reach out and be helping the next generation, whether it's working with kids, whether it's working with people coming out of the correctional facilities, whatever it is that's part of your purpose, that aligns to your purpose. Because when you have that authenticity, you will pour into it and it doesn't feel like extra work. It actually lights you up. And if your team is behind that, your whole team becomes advocates for that message. You can really, your whole company becomes part of that machine. And I could get on my high horse about that for all day, but this is about you guys. So we only have 10 minutes left, and we have a ton of questions in the Q&A. So I'm going to start firing these off. First is from Seth. What about processes for employees seeking to apply? I've seen many companies who don't have a formal process or make it way too overcomplicated. And so that people just don't apply. What would you guys say to that about processes for hiring?
I'd say some of ours are super quick. Like I got a resume Monday and the guy's already hired today. And he starts Thursday. But there are some of my contractors that have a much longer process, and some of it depends on the size of their company and their company, same thing, their vision and mission. And some of them have a longer process, and some of them, I send them a resume and they'll hire them. I think getting past maybe some of those stigmas that it's difficult, or working with those who don't. But ours is super simple, but I just don't think people maybe know it. It is, for the most part, not fill out an application. It is send me a resume, and it goes out to 90 people, and they probably will have 5 or 6 phone calls before I finish sending out the email. Again, like Steve said, there's no electricians or plumbers sitting waiting for the jobs for the most part anywhere.
Yeah, and I agree with Natasha. And to be perfectly honest, in this day and age, not even sometimes a resume is necessary. Sometimes someone who is just willing to get to work and makes the right call, or the right call a company. I can tell you that I would say 7 out of 10 of our companies are hiring right now. So really all you have to do, you can go on the abc.org website, look at our membership list, make calls, just call the company and ask if they're hiring. If they are, I think it's a great opportunity for you to take advantage of.
I think it's important to note that recruiting is sales. So don't make it hard to sell. Don't make it hard for people to buy from you or come and work for you. Make that process easy.
Our next question is from Sharon. Do any of you believe a 4-year degree in construction sciences or construction management adds value and or makes a difference in being promoted?
I can tell you, as you know, someone who was a college trustee and a school board member, one of the things that I fought for the most is we have all of this amazing curriculum in our industry, and Natasha, she has the same. The curriculum is amazing. Why does the educational I like to call them the educational authority, not say that curriculum is worth an associate in arts degree or in a bachelor's degree? It requires the same amount of work and rigor, and in fact more, because it requires on-the-job training hours as well. So I think we need to get the educational institutional complex on board with actually saying, if you have these credentials, then we will give you, AA degrees and bachelor's degrees, because there's no rhyme or reason why someone who is a trained electrician shouldn't have the same degree as somebody who's an English major. In my opinion, I just don't see the difference in that. And we've tried, and we're going to push, and that really needs to change from the educational sector, in my opinion.
Kind of disagree, and it's one of the main pushes I have in this Apprentice Association is to make those state colleges to look at our curriculum across the board, across at least the state of Florida, all the state colleges. Here's, if you do this, you take this many courses, this OJT counts for that. So it does it, kind of back to the question, there's a 4-year, construction degree. My college roommate has a 4-year construction degree, works in a construction agency, construction contractor, and works with people who don't have a degree on the same level as he does. He put in his work, I would say, 4 years in college. Many of them put in 4 years in OJT. I don't know that it necessarily gets them ahead. I think some of what it does is there are some exposure to some other courses that they sometimes are able to see, which opens your horizon a little bit, which gives you sometimes, and this isn't fair, but it's just the honest truth. It gives you the courage to apply for jobs you might not necessarily apply for. I don't necessarily think that you're any more necessarily qualified, but all of a sudden there's that stigma associated in that history that we have, and that, oh, I have a college degree, I can apply for this job. So many jobs requires a high school degree, but preferred is a bachelor's. And like I said, I used to be a K-12 teacher. I had some great teachers that were teacher assistants that were much better teachers with no degree than some of my teachers, who went through the master's degrees. And so does it help? Yes, it helps, but it is more sometimes, I think, because of the courage that, and sometimes the oomph they feel they get from it, not because they necessarily know a whole lot more. And I think we're changing and moving away from that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see college degrees and college programs become more mirroring our apprentice programs than vice versa. You already see specialized degrees that are steering away from the undergraduate liberal arts and are steering more towards really getting into their industry, which essentially is an apprentice program.
I would just ask, who's paying for it? If mom and dad are paying for it, help yourself. Yeah, go for it. If you want to just become a construction superintendent and you think the degree is going to help, I would just go to work, and then you don't saddle up yourself with 6 figures in college debt and end up in the same spot. And
many companies will pay for it after you've been there.
That's
if they really
exactly
want
right.
Want you to have a degree,
exactly
they'll
right.
pay for you to get that degree.
Yeah, but if you can go, as Natasha said, you can go and get exposure to other things and network and all that and have a good time. Congrats. Good for you.
So our next question is from Amanda. A big thing we're seeing in outreach efforts is job readiness or lack of job readiness, which is, being on time and preparing ahead. This varies from high school age to other groups. How would you address preparing people job readiness for a job in construction? The details of you have to be here on time and you should probably wear closed-toed shoes.
It's so true. We have it as part of our new worker training, one of the new worker trainings we do, and we make it available for our contractors, but it's something that's being developed. But we see it even in the resumes or applications. I say resumes because sometimes they don't even know how to write a resume, right? So they don't, even though they've been through high school, not necessarily capitalization is not a big thing anymore, right? It is, you text, it's all lowercase. And so some of it's that, and then showing up. And so some of there is some talking through what's appropriate to wear, and it doesn't have to be nice. It can be from the Goodwill down the street in a nice pair of khakis and go, $2 khakis and a $2 college shirt. And then also just the answering questions, but showing up, not just on time, showing up for an interview is something that we are working through. I was like I said, I just had a board meeting, and one of the members said, yeah, he got a raise because he made it to the second interview. And I was like, wow, okay, and so we do have that problem, but I don't think it is specific to construction. It is specific to where we are in this the world we live in right now. And we were just virtual for a year. Like we didn't leave our houses. Like we didn't leave PJs, and we put on shirts and maybe had on shorts. So there is that aspect, and it is a portion of we go over dress code the first night of our apprentice program, and that is, please don't wear opaque clothing, and please wear things that I don't see, cover your shoulders, and I don't want to see portions of you that don't need to be seen, and that is something we go over. The soft skills per se is what you say, and then we talk about proper email, and those things are important for them to do that progression, and that is the constant learning that Ben was talking about. Is it may not be constantly learning about bending pipe. It may be constantly learning about how to work with people, because essentially that's what we're all doing, right? We're all working with other people. If we'll learn along the way, it's great. But if you can't work with people, you're probably not going to do well in any industry.
Any industry, right?
That's exactly.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, sorry, Ben. I think one of the things that, and I'll be quick, one of the things that that we tell our apprentices is, look, or people who are wanting to get into the trade, show up, be on time, and be eager to learn. That's all you have to do. That is all you have to do. But that's tough for some folks. And I think, that's kind of the world we live in today. But, be present, be on time, and be willing to learn. And I think if they do that, they'll go far in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add the one thing we've told them is to ask for help. There is a unwillingness to ask for help. So whether it's you need a ride, because many of the kids as 18-year-olds, they don't have driver's license. Like to me, it was the biggest thing. They don't have driver's license because they never even thought about getting a car, or they would be able to get a car. So if you need help, ask. If you don't understand the math of it, ask. And that has not something that's always been pushed in their K through 12 world, but ask.
Well, and interestingly enough, I've read a lot of material about how that's part of the construction culture that that has been pervasive and now is changing. Is it's a culture of you don't ask what you don't know. You just figure it out, or you just pretend that and you hope that it works. But now research is showing that's a productivity issue. It's a performance issue. It's also a safety issue. So it's a huge safety issue. So that's part of the culture that is changing. And that's kind of opening up the topics of, it's okay to admit you don't know something. It's okay to ask a question. It's okay to be a little bit vulnerable, right? In this, kind of what has been historically a male dominated kind of tough industry. It's starting to open up and say, look, you have to be able to talk, because if you don't know how to do something, not only does it mean that we're going to have to redo this later, but you might get hurt. So our next question is from John, and it is, how can technology play a role in attracting new construction workers? Which I think is a great topic to dive into in our last few minutes.
I'll go first. We already talked a little bit about social media, the internet, the interwebs, but I would also say that what we're seeing, there's more and more technology being developed to help do the job better. Everything from, and you guys see it in your industries as well, but laser and GPS and all this stuff. There's actually there is a tremendous amount of technology in the industry. And I think that's another dirty little secret. People think that if they go work for a dirt company, let's say, that they're going to end up with the dumb end of a shovel all the time. It's like, no, you can, whether it's software, hardware, there's tons of technology that takes a lot of learning and a lot of training and a lot of skill to be able to use. It is incredible. It's like some of it's rocket surgery. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for people who may be more interested in a kind of a technology background. You can work for a dirt company, you can work for an electrical contractor and have a heavy tech bent and get what you need from that, get your kicks from that.
I think we've also seen, as the electrical industry goes it changes, right? So we're always going to need electricity. It's just, where's that electricity coming from? So is it low voltage? Is it solar? Are they coming from, what aspects are that? We're going to need air conditioning in Florida, right? You're always going to need air conditioning. It's just not going to not be something you need in Florida. So how's the air conditioning getting? Is it solar? Is it are you low voltage? Who's working on it? Who's putting it in? Your cars? Like, are you going to plug your car in? Well, that's electricity. So there are those new edge parts of technology. But then kind of going back to almost an old technology, like we've started offering more of our apprentice programs online. So as students are working in different parts of the state and they're going and we're making that available to them. Again, we had a small program online, COVID hit, and we're like, okay, this can work. So now there's a larger portion and we're able to reach more students. So students who might not have been in an area, but it also identified an area where we didn't necessarily know that there was a gap in that technology. So as the technology, it becomes positive, it's also opening up those areas where we know that technology is maybe a deficit. So I think it's both.
Yeah, and just to add, and kind of what Natasha and Benjamin both hit on, a lot of these commercial buildings are built online way before they're actually built in real life. So, they are building jobs because of the lack of workforce. A lot of these jobs are very efficient and they're built, and, as someone who sits in a forklift, or, those things are air conditioned now, like they didn't used to be before. So technology is making it a lot easier. Yeah. Technology is making it a lot easier for our skilled labor workers, and we're proud of all of the technological breakthroughs that we're having in the construction industry right now.
Well, it's 1:01. I want to respect everyone's time. Thank you guys so much for doing this. I think each one of you said you didn't have all the answers, but I think collectively you provided an awful lot of answers and an awful lot of help for our audience. So thank you so much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you everyone for joining us today. It was a huge turnout. I am so honored that you chose to spend an hour with us. The last comment in the Q&A is, great conversation on preparing for the future. Any suggestions on resources to find construction management type folks, quality control superintendents, safety managers? I'll let you guys answer that. But one thing I did want to say is I know for a fact there are some recruiting people who specialize in construction who are in the audience right now. There is a LinkedIn event chat for this webinar. You can email me at a.sullivan@mobilizationfunding.com if you need a link for that. But if you go onto LinkedIn and you look up mobilization funding, you'll find it. I thoroughly encourage all of you to introduce yourselves in that chat and what you do. So connect with each other. There were 200 people on this webinar. Let's start connecting. Let's start building these things. Let's find the solutions for each other. So I just wanted to put that out there. And then if any of you have a resource for finding those kinds of high level people, then let's go ahead and share, and then we'll wrap up for the day.
Well, if you want to go to abcflgulf.org, go to our website. My email address is on there. You can look at all of our resources. You can look at all of our member companies. And if you are interested in any careers in the construction industry, please feel free to email me. And my email address is on the website.
And I would say, ours is iecflorida.org, and I don't know where to find them. If you do, if you'll let me know, because my people would like to hire them. But in the I think the part is building them. So part of them is investing, and you may have to create your own pipeline from who you have. But similar to Steve's, all my information's on there. You can reach out through the iecflorida.org. We do have resumes on there under resources for people looking for jobs. They're not there very long. They don't last a whole long time. So but feel free to check them out. And I think the other part is there are, kind of like Adam said, there are some staffing companies that work specifically in that, some trade partner, and there's just different ones you can look at. If you look up, construction, temp jobs and so forth, they sometimes will have people in there. Or join one of our associations. I'm sure Steve will take a member. I definitely am a member. I'll tell you, we loan borrow. So that is our solution. When one of my companies needs more workers, they borrow them from another company in our association. So that's how we solve that. So if you're an electrician, give us a call. Give Steve a call. Definitely can help you with those. Or we'll train them for you. Put them in our apprentice program. We got some good ones.
I would say for me, anyone who's left on the call here, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. Just send me a connection request so we can kind of be in touch. I post about this stuff all the time, like nearly every day on LinkedIn. So that's a great place to reach me. And then we also have a handful of recruiters that work for us in-house. So if you're interested in anything in dirt, in excavation, heavy civil, we can definitely help with that. Either if you're somebody looking for a job, or if you're looking to recruit people, we might be able to help you out with that at BuildWit. So reach out to me.
Thank you, everyone. If you had to leave early or you didn't get to join live, just so you know, we will be doing a webinar replay. It'll be available on YouTube, and I will be sending out an email with a link to that to everyone who registered. So you can watch it again and again. Thank you, everyone, so much. Take care. Be well.